The mind has a center, and it drifts. That is not a character flaw. That is the nature of a mind living inside a demanding world. The center was set, but the demands came, the distractions accumulated, the worries moved in, the comparisons arrived uninvited, the replays started, the projections began, and at some point, without a specific moment you could identify, the center shifted. What was at the center is no longer at the center. Something else has taken that space. And everything else in the mind has reorganized around the new occupant. Recentering is the act of returning what belongs at the center to its rightful place. It is not a dramatic intervention. It is a deliberate one. A single choice made in the quiet of a Tuesday morning before the day has had a chance to push the center further from where it belongs. A choice to return, to bring God back to the center before the day fills the interior with whatever it will bring. This is Tuesday, April 14th, and before this day adds to what has already accumulated since Monday, you came here to recenter, not to rebuild from scratch, to return the one thing that was there before everything else arrived, God, at the center. Before anything else, His word declares in the book of Colossians chapter 3 verse 2, to set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. Set, that is an active, deliberate prior act. Not wait for the mind to naturally arrive at the right focus. Set it there, intentionally, before the Tuesday presents its claims on where the mind should be directed. Set. The mind that is set holds its center differently than the mind that allows the day to set it. Before we enter this prayer, write in the comments right now, Lord, recenter my mind today. You are the still point in everything that moves. Write it as the returning. As the act of putting back at the center what the week has been moving toward the edges. Like this video as an act of choosing recentering over drift. Subscribe to this channel so we can begin every morning together, including the Tuesdays when the drift from Monday has already begun and the week is only one day old. And share this prayer with someone who needs to return to center before today adds to the distance from it. Now let us recenter together before the day adds more to carry. Lord my God and my Father, I come before you on this Tuesday morning and I name something honestly. The center has drifted, not dramatically, but perceptibly. What was at the center of my interior this time last week, or this time last month, is not quite where it was. The concerns have grown into a larger share of the interior than they were meant to occupy. The worries have moved from the periphery toward the center. The distractions have found purchase. The noise of the week has been reordering the interior according to its own priorities rather than yours. I bring that honest assessment to you now, not as a confession of failure, as the accurate starting point for the recentering that this prayer is asking for. You cannot return to a center you have not honestly located, and the locating, honest and undefended, is where this prayer begins. Your word declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 46, verse 10, to be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Exalted. That is the center, the exaltation of God, not the management of my concerns, not the navigation of my demands, not the resolution of what has been worrying me. You, exalted, at the center. And everything else held in its proper place relative to that center. Be still and know. That is the practice of recentering, not more activity, stillness. And in the stillness, the knowing that reestablishes what belongs at the center and what does not. And Father, I want to name something specific about what Tuesday requires from recentering that Monday did not. Monday arrives with the energy of a new week, the fresh start. The intention, the plan. There is a natural momentum that carries Monday forward, even without deliberate recentering. Tuesday is different. Tuesday is the first day where the energy of the new week has been partially spent, where the gap between the plan and the reality is becoming visible, where Monday's good intentions have met Monday's actual demands, and the interior is recalibrating from the collision. The drift that began on Tuesday morning is not always dramatic. It is the quiet settling into a slightly lower posture, the slight dimming of the Monday intention as the Tuesday reality asserts itself. The slow movement of concern from the background toward the foreground now that the week's early momentum can no longer hold it there. Recentering on Tuesday is not the same act as recentering on Monday. It is more honest, more necessary, less propped up by the natural energy of the week's beginning. The person who recenters on Tuesday does it from a more accurate assessment of where they actually are than the person who recenters on Monday from the height of fresh intention. And that honesty brought before God is where the real work of the interior begins. Let this Tuesday recentering be more honest than Monday's, Lord. More real, more accurate, and more effective precisely because of the accuracy. Father, I want to name what happens when the center drifts and something else occupies it. The occupant changes everything, because the center is not a passive position. Whatever is at the center of the mind is what everything else is organized around. The concerns become the lens through which everything is interpreted. The worry becomes the atmosphere in which every conversation happens. The fear becomes the context in which every decision is made. The center shapes the entire interior experience, and the wrong occupant at the center produces a distorted version of reality. The worried center sees threat before it sees opportunity. The anxious center sees what could go wrong before it sees what is going right. The comparative center sees what is lacking before it sees what is present. Every center produces a version of reality that is shaped by what is doing the seeing. The God-centered mind sees differently, not because the facts changed, because the lens changed. The same difficult situation viewed from a God-centered interior looks different than the same difficult situation viewed from a worry-centered one. Not easier, more accurately, with the wider frame that only the God-centered perspective includes. The frame that contains not only the difficulty, but the God who is in the difficulty, working in it, faithful through it, already preparing what the difficulty is, preparing the person for. Your word declares in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 18 that we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Fix. Same active, deliberate word. Before the seen things claim the eyes, fix the eyes on what is unseen, the eternal perspective, the wider frame, the center that includes what the drift toward worry and distraction always leaves out. Lord, recenter my mind today. You are the still point in everything that moves. And Father, I want to ask for something specific about what the recentered mind does with the concerns that were occupying the wrong position. Because recentering is not the elimination of concerns, it is the right sizing of them. The concern that had grown to occupy the center of the mind, once God is returned to the center, does not disappear. It moves to its proper position. It is seen in the light of the one who holds it rather than in the darkness of the mind that was carrying it alone. And in that light, the concern reveals its actual size, which is almost always smaller than the center-occupying version that had displaced everything else. And I want to ask for the specific quality that the recentered mind brings to the relationships of today. Because the mind, living from the drifted center, brings the wrong occupant into every interaction. The worried person brings their worry to the conversation. The comparison-driven person brings their deficit to the exchange. The anxious person brings their bracing to the connection. And the people receiving them get a version of the person that is shaped by the occupant at the center, rather than by the person themselves. The recentered mind brings God into the room, not as a performance of spirituality, as the actual presence of what is at the center, overflowing into the interaction. the patience that comes from the still point, the genuine interest in the other person that anxiety prevents, the listening that is possible when the interior is not running its own competing narrative, the kindness that flows naturally from a heart that has been returned to its right orientation. Your word declares in the book of Galatians, chapter 5, verse 22, that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That fruit does not grow on a drifted mind. It grows on the centered one. The mind that has been brought to God this Tuesday morning, returned to the still point, is the environment where that fruit is produced, not through effort, through the natural overflow of what is at the center. Let me bring that overflow into every interaction today, Lord. Not what the drift was producing, what the centering produces. Lord, I want to bring something into this prayer about what order in the mind actually looks like. Order is not silence. Silence in the mind is not the goal. The ordered mind is not empty, it is arranged. Things are in their right places. The concerns are present, but they are not at the center. The demands are visible, but they are not the lens through which everything else is seen. The priorities are organized according to what actually matters, rather than according to what arrived most loudly. The mind is occupied, but not cluttered. Active, but not chaotic. Full, but not disordered. There is a remarkable image in the first chapter of Genesis. Before creation, the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And then God spoke, and order came. Not by the earth organizing itself, by the Spirit hovering over the chaos and God speaking into it. Light separated from darkness, waters separated from land, order brought into the formless. That is the God hovering over the interior this Tuesday morning. Over whatever has become formless in the mind during the first day and a half of the week, the Spirit hovering, ready to bring order to the chaos, not by the person managing it better, but by God speaking into it. Let God speak into the interior today, into the formless parts, the areas where clarity should be but is not, the places where the priorities have blurred together into an indistinguishable mass of equal urgency. The spaces where the concerns have grown beyond their proper boundaries and are now occupying territory that belonged to something else. Speak, Lord, into all of it, and let the speaking bring the order that the managing never could. Your word declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 139, verse 23, to ask God to search the heart and know it, to test the thoughts and see if there is any anxious way in the person, and to lead in the way everlasting. Know my thoughts. That invitation is the beginning of order. The God who knows the thoughts can organize them according to what they actually are, rather than according to the disorder the anxiety imposed on them. The genuine concern separated from the imagined one. The important demand separated from the merely urgent one. The real priority separated from the thing that arrived most loudly. The knowing brings the ordering. And I want to receive something from that Genesis image that carries into the practical ordering of today. When God spoke order into the formless, He did it with a purposeful sequence. First light, then separation, then filling. The order was not arbitrary. Each element prepared the space for what came next. The ordering of the mind works similarly. The first thing God speaks into the formless interior is light. Clarity about what is actually there, what is real versus what is imagined. What is significant versus what is urgent. What requires action versus what requires release. In the light of God's presence in the interior, the formless differentiates, and the differentiated mind can begin to organize itself according to what actually belongs where. Then the separation, the genuine concern separated from the spiraling worry, the real priority separated from the artificial urgency, the truth separated from the anxiety-generated interpretation. And after the separation, the right filling, the space that was holding the misplaced thing now available for what belongs there. Your word declares in the book of Romans chapter 12 verse 2, to not conform to the pattern of this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The renewing is the reordering. The transformation is the result of a mind that has been repeatedly brought to God and repeatedly had the formless spoken into, not in a single dramatic event. In the accumulated practice of Tuesday morning prayers and Wednesday morning prayers, and every morning that the mind returns to God before the drift becomes the day, let the renewing happen today, Lord, in the ordinary Tuesday, in the unremarkable hours. The mind being transformed not by what the world is filling it with, but by what God is speaking into it. Lord, recenter my mind today. You are the still point in everything that moves. Father, I want to ask now for what the recentered and ordered mind produces in the specific hours of this Tuesday. Presence, actual, full, genuine presence. The disordered mind is never fully in the moment it is occupying. Part of it is in the last conversation that did not resolve. Part of it is in the next meeting that has not yet happened. Part of it is in the concern that has nothing to do with the current moment, but that the disordered interior cannot set aside long enough to be where it actually is. The disordered mind is scattered across time. The recentered mind is in the present. Not because it has no awareness of past or future, because it has been returned to the still point that is not located in the past or the future. God is present tense. I am is his name, not I was, not I will be, I am. The recentered mind finds its still point in the one whose name is the present moment, and from that still point, the person is actually here, in the Tuesday, in the conversation, in the moment that is occurring rather than the one that occurred or the one that will occur. Before the next meeting of today, take one moment, Lord, I am here, you are here. This moment is enough to be in. That is the practice of the recentered mind, not a withdrawal from the demands. A return to the still point that makes the engagement with the demands genuine rather than scattered. Your word declares in the book of Exodus, chapter 3, verse 14, that God said to Moses, I am who I am. That is what you shall say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. The name of God is the present tense of being, and the person whose center is occupied by the I am is a person who has been returned to the only moment where God is located, the present one, right here, right now, in this Tuesday, in this conversation, in this specific unrepeatable moment that will not come again. Let me be fully in the moments this Tuesday offers, Lord, not half here and half elsewhere, fully present, recentered, in the I am. And Father, I want to ask for the recentered mind to change one specific quality of today's interactions. I want to ask for genuine curiosity, not the performed interest of someone who knows they should ask questions. The actual wondering about the other person's experience, the real interest in what they are thinking, feeling, navigating. Because the drifted mind, occupied by its own concerns, is not curious about other people. It is patient with them at best. It waits its turn to return to its own interior preoccupations. The recentered mind, with God at the center rather than its own concerns, is free to be genuinely curious. The anxiety that was consuming the attention has been returned to God, and the attention, now available, finds its natural direction toward the people who are sharing the day. Your word declares in the book of Philippians chapter 2 verse 4, to not look only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. Not only. The interests of others require attention that the anxiety-occupied mind does not have available. The recentered mind does. It has been freed by the recentering from the self-referential loop that prevents genuine interest in what is happening for someone else. Let me be that genuinely interested person today, Lord. curious about what the people around me are navigating, present enough to actually receive what they are offering, free enough from my own interior preoccupations to notice what is happening in theirs. Lord, recenter my mind today. You are the still point in everything that moves. Father, as this prayer closes, I want to receive something about what it means to live from the center rather than from the drift. The person living from the center does not move through the day reactively. They are not shaped primarily by what arrives. They are shaped by what they have returned to. The meeting does not define the response because the response came from somewhere the meeting did not reach. The difficult conversation does not determine the quality of the next moment because the next moment was re-entered from the still point rather than from the residue of the difficult exchange. Living from the center produces a kind of consistency that the person living from the drift does not have. The drifted person is different in different contexts, reactive, inconsistent, shaped by whatever they just encountered. The centered person carries something into every context that is not produced by the context, something that was brought, not generated, that arrived from the still point and has not changed because the context changed, that something is peace. It is the direct product of the center being what it should be. When God is at the center, the peace that comes from His presence is the ambient atmosphere of the interior, regardless of what is happening on the exterior, not the absence of difficulty. The presence of the God who holds the difficulty. Peace not as a feeling contingent on circumstances, but as the natural environment of a mind centered on the one who is peace. Your word declares in the book of Isaiah, chapter 26, verse 3, that you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you. Steadfast. That is the maintained center, the mind that keeps returning to God when the drift begins. That does not let the drift go far before the deliberate return. That practices the recentering often enough that the center holds better week by week, not perfectly, persistently. Perfect peace is the result. Not of perfect circumstances, of steadfast minds, minds that keep returning, minds that recenter before the drift has gone too far. Minds that make Tuesday morning prayer a non-negotiable practice, not because it is an obligation, but because the peace that comes from it is the most real and useful thing available before the day begins. Perfect peace is the result, not of perfect circumstances. Of steadfast minds, minds that keep returning, minds that recenter before the drift has gone too far. Minds that make Tuesday morning prayer a non-negotiable practice, not because it is an obligation, but because the peace that comes from it is the most real and useful thing available before the day begins. And I want to name something about what living from the center looks like in the specific texture of the rest of this Tuesday. It looks like choosing the patient response when the impatient one is available. It looks like the question asked instead of the statement made. It looks like the pause before the reaction, when the situation has provided more than enough material for an immediate one. It looks like the second thought given to a thing the first thought had already processed. Small, unremarkable, but the product of a mind that has been returned to the still point and is operating from it rather than from the drift. Your word declares in the book of Proverbs, chapter 14, verse 30, that a tranquil heart gives life to the flesh. Tranquil. Not empty, not disengaged, tranquil. The heart that has been recentered is tranquil not because nothing difficult is happening, but because the center is holding, and the tranquil heart gives life to the person carrying it and to the people who encounter it. The recentered person is a life-giving presence in a room, not because they said the right things or performed the right spiritual behaviors, because something real is at their center and it is overflowing into whatever they touch. Let me be a life-giving presence today, Lord, because the still point has been found, and found things overflow. Lord, recenter my mind today. You are the still point in everything that moves. The center has a name, the still point has a person, and the mind that returns to that person before the day does its work is the mind that moves through the day from a different foundation than the mind that does not. To everyone who prayed with me this morning, go back to the comments and write it one final time. Lord, recenter my mind today. You are the still point in everything that moves. Return to that when the drift begins again, not as a failure to address, as the practice to maintain. Every return to the center is the practice deepening. Every drift acknowledged and corrected is the mind learning its way back to the still point. Subscribe to this channel and come back tomorrow morning. We are here every day, returning to center before the day moves us from it. Share this prayer with someone whose mind you know is scattered, someone who is being shaped by what arrives rather than by what they have returned to. What you send might be the still point they have not been able to find in the noise. May the Lord recenter your mind today in ways that hold through every conversation and every decision and every moment the day presents. May the drift that has been happening since Monday be reversed in this prayer. May the order that God speaks into the formless interior bring the clarity and the peace that the disordered mind was spending its energy trying to manufacture. And may the still point you found in this Tuesday morning prayer be the place you return to all day long. In Jesus' name, amen.